recording at this point? Indeed so. So welcome to those who have joined us. My name is Matt Miller. I'm not going to jump in just yet. We'll give others a chance to join. And hold on to your hats. Adam and Kelly, you want to give me a thumbs up and tell me to hit the... Okay, very good. Well, again, thank you everyone for joining us. We do have a significant audience today. As a consequence, we're very eager to present to you information on what we call Request for Proposal 5701, Data-Driven Resources to Spur Clean Energy Adoption. Because we have so many attendees and a number of questions, we will answer most questions in writing. And address only a few during today's presentation, but we do invite you to present questions to us today, and I assure you we will answer all of them and respond in writing on our website. Along with the recording, the meeting is being recorded. So, okay. I am Matt Miller, Senior Project Manager, part of the Clean and Resilient Buildings team here at NYSERDA. I'm joined today by Patrick O'Shea, Director of Market Development, heavily involved in clean and resilient buildings as well. And we wish to share with you information on this RFP. Next slide, please. The agenda today is to review the project, what our background and objectives are, because we are building on work we have already started. We'll give you some sense of the RFP process, which, in case you've not seen this before, how we work at NYSERDA, get things done in terms of the timeline and the basis for the award and so on. And then we will allow some time for discussion, but as I mentioned, we're going to keep it relatively short. I share one slide here of historical note. When I joined NYSERDA 6 years ago, this was the first output that we prepared based upon the data that we had available to us at that time. What it shows is the Hudson River flowing through the center of the picture. The jigsaw puzzles are gas territories. Red splotches are buildings that use natural gas, and green, although it shows as electric, are really other fuels, predominantly oil. And as a consequence, we thought this was pretty big stuff, and it was certainly well received in the market. But so much has progressed in terms of building data and analytical capabilities, and we've progressed along with that on several fronts within the organization, and we now seek to continue to pursue that work over the next 3 years. So that's the basis. We know this is a dynamic field, and we're eager to have you participate. Next slide, please. So just a quick snapshot of today's discussion. What we seek from you are several things. An ability to handle our existing building data and acquire additional data at NYSERDA's direction. We have a very large database of program data that we have developed over the years for the various outreach programs that we have funded at homeowners and building owners and so on, both existing and new construction. We certainly have access to parcel data from New York State and other private resources and so on. And we want to continue to build on all of that and so much more data that is out there that many of you are already working with. We want this platform, this data, to be presented on a platform that is accessible to all of NYSERDA staff. That's well over 200 people. And we want you to provide support for data analysis and potentially for modeling in some fashion. So these are the three key things that we seek. We don't want to creep too far beyond these things. We do want to allow you to provide us with the capability to add insights and consultation as we may request through the course of the 3-year program. But again, it's most important that we focus on presenting clear and concise, complete data and on a platform that is usable by various members of our staff. The program needs to support specifically our Clean and Resilient Buildings team. I think the name is fairly illustrative of what we seek, where we are developing a number of programs and executing those programs, and we need the data to support both the design and the execution of our programs. We also seek to integrate the map data to support programs related to policy analysis, and which is perhaps some may say a little bit higher level, but we very much prefer to have discrete building data that can serve both of our individual program needs and our policy needs. Next slide, please. So just a little background for those who may not be fully aware of what we call NYSERDA, or the New York State Energy Research and Development Authority. We've been around since 1975 and have gone from the days of the oil crisis and providing programs to support energy efficiency and save money, to really shifting towards advancing renewable energy and reducing our reliance on fossil fuels. Certainly that's relevant with electric vehicles and so on, but it is no more important than it is in the building stock, both from single family residentials all the way up to the tallest buildings in Manhattan, where fossil fuels are still heavily used. And we move towards building electrification is a very critical step in New York State. Next slide, please. Within NYSERDA, there are many teams. We have Green Bank and, as I mentioned, our policy team and so on, but very specifically, programmatic perspective, we have our Clean and Resilient Buildings team that contains several other teams related to codes and standards, single family residential market, multifamily, commercial and institutional, and several other activities. And the work that we're requesting here is really intended to support those teams in their efforts. So again, as I've mentioned, we seek a comprehensive, quantitative, building-centric data set and the analytical tools to accelerate our building electrification and clean energy programs. I do want to mention building-centric is a word that comes to my mind all the time, and a lot of people say, Miller, what are you talking about? But I think the important thing here is tax parcels are not buildings. And many buildings have numerous tax parcels associated with them. Tax parcels are generally readily available and from public sources, but they are often incomplete or incorrect. Data sparsity is quite high. And what we really want is information on the buildings, which can be gleaned from the tax parcel data, but in and of themselves are not sufficient. Based upon all of that, we want to execute sound strategies to drive building electrification, where our goals are carbon-free electricity by 2040 and 85% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions by 2050. Rather lofty goals that we've sustained, that we've maintained for some time, and with your help, we'll achieve those goals. Next slide, please. Okay, we noticed that some people are not seeing the slides, so I guess I'll, at this point, hopefully that we can resolve any issues they may have with that, but I do want to assure you that we will be sending out a recording along with the slides and answers to the questions, so that if there's any gaps in your ability to join the presentation today, we will provide you with a means to rectify the problem. So I want to mention that going back to 2020, which seems like yesterday, but it's longer ago than that, we recognized with our various program teams, single family codes and standards and so on, that we faced common barriers when leveraging data for our programs. We were all dealing with multiple disparate data sets owned by each of the various teams, People had difficulty assessing the data. It wasn't in a user-friendly format. Certainly running queries required a certain expertise that was not the kind of thing that was, well, I suppose I would say as simple as Excel, but even some people find that difficult. And so there were limitations, and as well, there were limitations on the data to answer strategic questions. How many buildings are there? As simple as that. How many are used for single family? How many use oil for heat and so on? These are really critical questions to us because they do drive our programs. Furthermore, data sets tended to be static and not updated regularly. They're supposed to be, but that doesn't mean that they are. And I can tell you that from some fairly prominent sources, we found errors in the data that fortunately we were able to correct. So the completeness and number of errors in the available data really created some problems. So next slide, please. So we embarked, there we go. So, we've embarked upon programs to aggregate all of the data that we could and build the most robust and complete data set that we could prepare that again was building centric. And we want to continue that work based upon the success that we've had. And what we wish to do is incorporate relevant building asset data, our program performance data, which I mentioned, and broader market knowledge that some things that we are aware of and also some things that you may be aware of. We want to be able to provide analytical tools to assess various market scenarios. If prices change or if the availability of hydrogen improves or whatever. Oh, go back, please. And we want to offer some sort of means of measuring progress and adjusting as market conditions dictate. So we're not a static organization. We have seen a significant uptick, say, in the adoption of heat pumps, and we want to continue to monitor the progress there and continue to expand. So, next slide, please. Two key elements that I keep coming back to is the data and the analytics. So this slide focuses on the data. And there's certainly more in the actual solicitation. We seek a curated, that's your job, is to curate the data, to pull all the data together, real-time data sources, and a pipeline that incorporates, again, field data from our NYSERDA programs. We undertake, one of our other teams within the organization undertakes building stock sector assessments on a roughly every 3-year basis. Some of that is done by survey and some of it is done by actual market assessments. We want to be able to pull that data into our building data analytics platform. Again, I've mentioned things as tax assessor data, multiple listing service data, or real estate transaction data, which includes really important data in terms of the age of the building, the size of the building, square footage, the height of the building, the footprint of it. How the building is used is particularly important as a resource that comes from the tax assessor data. Certainly what kind of heating system there is and what kind of utilities are accessible by the property. And what kind of additional delivered fuels may be used, such as kerosene or oil or what have you. And then there's permit data, which can be somewhat sparse throughout various parts of New York City state, but New York City has some very significant data available that is important, and other kind of structural improvements that may be made or changes that people have made to their heating systems. There may be additional data that we seek, such as demographic data and owner-occupant income information, geographic information. We do look at things in terms of census blocks or neighborhoods, certainly county and region of the state. One of the things more recently, Uber has their H3. We've started to look at things in terms of geographic area basis. Others, you may have some familiarity with that kind of work. And we also have within NYSERDA something called
Hey, Matt.
disadvantaged communities.
Matt, could we just pause for a moment?
Yep.
Could you let people know how to submit a question during the webinar? Could we just stop and do that for a moment?
I'm going to leave that up to you, Adam or Kelly. Is it best to use?
Yes.
Go ahead, Kelly.
We have a Q&A source on the bottom right-hand part of your screen. You should be able to open that and submit questions through there. It goes directly to the entire panel, and we will be taking them there.
Okay. Yeah, sorry, folks. When I see the messages scrolling by, they're on a different screen. I tend to be a little focused at this point. So what I was mentioning was that we also look at things in terms of disadvantaged communities. If you read up on NYSERDA, you'll see how important that is to our goals. And that is not the same thing as low to moderate income, although that is one facet of the measure. And we'd like to be able to break out the data in terms of disadvantaged communities. Likewise, climate data, geothermal potential, which is a very significant area for future heating requirements, and solar gain, of course, will continue to be important. So these are the kind of data sources that we seek to incorporate. Many of these, most of these, we have worked with, but there's just so many more out there, and we seek your expertise to again provide that focused word of curated. What I've provided below in italics is really important, because since you will be pulling data from various sources and preparing a curated data set, we want to be able to access that. But we also do want to be able to work with any subcontractors who are providing you additional data, so that your relationship was with them, but we want to be able to work with that data as well, so that we can undertake our own quality assessments or our own individual work with those data sets. This is a particularly important point. So I just want to make everyone aware of that. If you feel there is need for some sort of restrictions on data access within NYSERDA, especially or possibly for some cleansed public presentations, that's got to be clearly stated in your proposal, as well as a markup of the sample agreement that we have provided to you. We try to be fair in terms of how we handle all these matters, but we have to have the access. We need to be able to work with the data in its full glory. So a very key point. Next slide, please. So moving from the data, now we can talk a little bit about the analytics platform. Certainly an area where there are some substantive advances that have occurred, and resources that are available both for geospatial mapping and overall data analytics, which are very, very powerful and really cutting edge at this point. As a consequence, the platform that you provide us must meet with New York State Information Technology Services or cybersecurity policy. All of that is outlined in the draft contract that we have provided to you. And it's very important. When you have the name New York State Energy and Research and Development in your name, cybersecurity is a very significant and important factor in our business considerations. We want to be able on this platform to segment the market by building type. I mentioned the building type or building uses earlier. It's very significant to us, as well as geographic location, ownership, occupancy. Certainly there's quite a bit of interest in subsidized or disadvantaged housing as well. We want to be able to identify and target buildings where there is a great likelihood that the heating, ventilating, and air conditioning systems in the building envelope will be upgraded over a specified time horizon. Heating systems tend to be replaced no faster than on a 20-year basis. And as a consequence, if you miss the window of opportunity, you've now got somebody burning oil for another 20 years. So we really want to be able to identify those kinds of buildings where the need is compelling and catch them before they make what we consider not a good decision. Homes that were built in before World War II certainly have very different insulation and building characteristic than more recent buildings. And again, they represent opportunities for improving the building envelope through insulation, new windows, or what have you. And finally, the platform should be able to measure adoption rates based upon key market drivers. So if we were to look at certain factors in terms of the market, how might adoption rates be impacted? Next slide, please. Those are two very, very key slides here. So what I want to do now is just back up a little bit and acknowledge data availability and analytics are changing rapidly, which is why we are offering this opportunity. We do seek new ideas and we're open to new technology that you are currently using, that you have developed and can meet the requirements that we have to launch and have access to your program by January 1 of 2025. Mission critical for us. We don't want to lose continuity in our programs. Again, we request access to all your primary data vendors and their data. That doesn't mean we want to control their lives, but we do want to have good working relationships as you serve us to meet our needs. We would like to have technical support available on a daily basis. That does not mean that we need to dial an 800, the hotline, and that you will be there, but it does mean we do want you to be available on a regular basis to support our needs when questions come up. And as mentioned before, cybersecurity is very important, and there is an insurance requirement. The last two items deal with reporting, and I like to have a conversational and collegial working style with people, but as a state authority, we do require quarterly written reports that summarize the work that has been done in the period, and covering progress of the work, the budgets, and any changes. And very critical to our work here is a constantly updated data dictionary of all the fields and the enumerations within the fields. Any changes to the methodology or code that is used to generate the aggregated and curated data set. All of that kind of information is very critical so that we have an understanding as to where we are in the project. And as personnel change, as we add staff or your organization changes, we really need to have that information. And then, of course, we'll want a final report due 1 month after the project end to summarize any and all of the work that has completed. Next slide, please. So a little bit about the time frame. As shared in the solicitation, we seek a 3-year contract with an option to renew at our request for an additional 2 years. We think that's a pretty significant time frame. I have not mentioned the budget here of $1.5 million. That is based upon our work in the past and with other contractors and cognizant of what is required. We're holding tight. We envision that proposals will be, we want to give you some latitude in how you structure your proposals, but our opinion is that breaking it out into 3 elements: an initial fee to launch the resources, recognizing that you're going to be bringing on data sources and analytical resources and so on, is prudent. And then an annual subscription fee to keep paying the bills for your staff as well as the resources you tap. And then a separate fee schedule for any additional consultative services that we both mutually agree are relevant to our program in the coming time. That gives us a little bit of latitude as to where we go. So please factor those kind of things into your proposals. Proposals are due before 3 p.m. on June 27th, 2024. I mention that because the hardest part of my job is, and I've done this, is when people do not submit before 3 p.m. If it can't come in at 3:01, it can't come in to me, and it has to be done properly. I've been told it takes about an hour to set up the system when you're logging in to provide us this information. And I just hate having to call people and say, I'm sorry, we can't review the proposal that you've worked so hard on. So please bear that in mind, get familiar with our system. We will convene a scoring committee of people who will review all of the proposals, and we expect to announce a winner by midsummer 2024. I think it bears repeating here. There is only going to be one winner. So factor that into your thinking that, we've been pretty clear we're looking for capabilities, that your firm clearly can articulate, has experience serving others, and that we want some very good proposals so that we can focus in and provide the winning bidder with the contract. We expect to issue a contract soon thereafter, which is why we are providing you with the draft agreement, because we want you to be well aware of what our stipulations are, and so that your legal folks can to move forward quickly as we award the prize. We expect work to commence immediately upon the signature of the contract, such that roughly speaking, in the fourth quarter of this year, we will allow you to undertake an assessment of our current data resources and familiarize yourself with our work as we also familiarize ourselves with your organization. And then we expect to have a platform available at the beginning of next year with data that we can, continue our work. It does not mean that everything has to be in place, but boy, the more that's included, the more complete it is, will certainly weigh heavily on our thinking as we review the proposals. Next slide, please. Just a few more slides here. The next two are probably statements of what we expect, the structure of things. There are three sections here. Section 1 is really the meat of what your proposal is to us in terms of a summary of your background and objectives as you understand what we seek, the actual scope of work. I'm giving a fair amount of latitude here for 10 pages because I know a lot of this is not easy to explain, but conciseness is important to us. If you wax on too long, you'll lose your audience. We want to know a little bit about your management plan and the structure of your organization. We want some sense of the qualifications that you bring based upon your work with other people. Letters of commitment, particularly from those who will serve as subcontractors to you, is very important so that we know we're involved. Legally, our relationship is with you. You will be the first point of contact, but having that level of commitment from your subcontractors is important. And again, resumes of all your key team is critically important. The section 2 and section 3 have been provided as attachments to the solicitation page. The first one deals with project personnel and billing rates, and a breakout as to how you expect your personnel to be allocating their time through the course of the project, the various milestone stages. And then again, we seek a markup of the sample agreement and statement work that we have provided you. In this case, less is more. Next slide, please. These are the elements of the criteria that our scoring committee will use. I would focus very heavily on the overall relevant experience of your team and the qualification and expertise of that personnel and team. They're just mission critical to us. Certainly your responsiveness to the RFP and capabilities to deliver service gives an indication of, are we going to have a good working relationship? Will you be able to serve our needs mano a mano, if I might put it that way? Backing up to pricing, notice it says pricing and timing. I've talked a lot about timing. Pricing, clearly it's important. We are a state authority and don't have carte blanche. But at the same time, I do want to acknowledge we seek value in this work. So please keep that in mind. And lastly, your insights into the market and your understanding of building sciences is very critical. I'm sure we'll see that in your resumes and in your prior work. And then there were always other considerations as to work you're currently doing in disadvantaged communities or with minority and women-owned businesses and veterans and disabled um, service disabled and veteran organizations is very important to us as well. Next slide, please. Okay, here we go. Patrick, you haven't jumped in too much, so here's your chance. I think what I want to mention here is, again, we will be addressing question and answer in writing. Patrick has a few that we'll address. Questions for you is, I want you to understand, ask yourselves, do your goals align with, do our goals align with your capabilities? Really important to a 3-year effort. Do you have what it takes to meet the June 27th proposal due date? It's not a long window of time, but it is, quite frankly, longer than many of our solicitations. And again, the ability to launch in the 4th quarter of 24. Patrick?
So Matt, let me, I'll start with the first question. So how was the $1.5 million estimate for the RFP developed, given the need for a new data platform tool, ongoing support for the tool, energy modeling capability? Is that the finalized budget, or is there an opportunity for expanding the budget on the ask? The budget was set based upon NYSERDA's experience in developing the existing buildings data platform, acquiring additional licensed data, and providing all of the associated services. We have made upward adjustments based on inflation and a refined set of needs. While NYSERDA is interested in the value-added aspects of a bid, there is no room in the budget or desire to increase the scope of the proposal beyond what is requested. So that's question 1. And this, again, these will be provided in writing after the webinar. The RFP notes critical data required for insights modeling of the data sources listed, which are currently available to NYSERDA. Would the bidder gain access to existing data sets within NYSERDA, or would they need to gain access to these data sets on their own? The bidder would gain access to public, programmatic, and NYSERDA-owned data sets that already exist. The bidder should set aside a budget for securing additional data sets that require a license, such as MLS data, geospatial data. The cost for these licenses should be included in the proposal and the vendor identified as a subcontractor. Okay, I'll stop there for a moment. Go on to the next question. Are all of the data sources already identified, or will there need to be a requirements gathering to understand the source of truth for the data sources? NYSERDA has, so the answer, NYSERDA has identified all primary known data sources. NYSERDA understands the current completeness and accuracy of these primary data sources. NYSERDA is open to replacing any of the licensed data sources with a better source upon a cost-benefit analysis. I'll go on to the next question. There is mention of several technologies that will connect to and access these aggregated model data sets: Tableau, SAS, SQL, MS Excel. Can you list all the existing tools and technologies that would interact with and integrate with this data platform tool? So the answer, NYSERDA intends to pull data from the building platform into Tableau, SAS, and ArcGIS. NYSERDA intends to pull data from Salesforce and other internal program databases onto the building platform. Ad hoc data may come from a variety of data formats, including Tableau, SAS, ArcGIS, HP XML, and Excel. And then finally, there is a mention of an existing analytics platform and that this effort is not to replace that platform. Can you clarify the intent of the RFP? Is NYSERDA seeking a new platform tool to enable this capability or a product service to access this data and insights? The intent of the RFP is to use existing building data and metadata that we have gathered and improved, the curated data set, and allow you the opportunity to enhance that data. The curated data set is independent of the technical platform that houses the data. We have used several analytic resources which you may find acceptable, but we are open to alternatives. We do seek strong technical and analytical support from the contractor. We've already gathered about 30 other questions, and we will provide answers to those in writing following the webinar. They will be posted along with the webinar with the RFP. Okay, Matt, back to you.
Sure. Thank you, Patrick. I appreciate that. By the way, I have come back off mute. I want to make sure you can hear me. One thing I do want to mention, in as much as we mention our work with ArcGIS and Tableau, when you're dealing with 5 million plus buildings and much broader data in terms of building units or residential units and so on, there's a lot of data. And we really need a robust platform to handle that data. I have found some of the services or resources I've provided tend to really bog down when you look at anything below zip code level data aggregate groupings. And so we really do want some horsepower in the platform that you provide. And I'm sure that you are involved in this will understand that. So, okay, I think we have another slide or so, and we're really in the backstretch here. Again, just reflecting back on what we've discussed here today, that the execution of sound strategies to drive clean and resilient buildings is critical to NYSERDA's goals and certainly to New York State goals. Our governor is well behind this. And that having good information, building data, ability to do analytics and develop metrics that are complete, correct, current, and accessible is really fundamental to our success. Again, that reflects back to the point I said where we canvassed our organization in 2020, and we clearly found, yeah, we're drowning in lots of data and not enough information. So hackneyed phrase, but really important. There's plenty of data. We need to turn it into actionable information. We seek a contractor to provide a comprehensive and readily accessible resource, meaning that it's user-friendly, and the people in the organization can, with modest training and support, access the data and use it to support the development of their clean and resilient building programs. And then finally, again, being self-service and easy to use resource will incorporate all of this data and offer analytical tools to development deployment scenarios as well as energy savings. So that, in a nutshell, is what we've discussed today and what we seek. A lot of focus on the data and a lot of focus on the ability to access and analyze the data to benefit the programs that we provide to the citizens of the state of New York. And the last slide I will share is contact information. I am the project manager supporting this program. I've certainly received a number of emails already at the address noted, and I certainly welcome additional questions and so on that we can incorporate into um, the summary that we will provide in short order and post on our website. Lori Armstrong is our contract manager and certainly has knowledge that goes far beyond mine in terms of how we get things done here. And you are certainly able to write her at lori.solicitations as well. So these are your two contacts. We ask you not to contact others within NYSERDA. It creates an untenable situation for everyone. And really, we do tend to be, as I mentioned, in terms of getting your proposal in on time and so on, we tend to be rather strict in terms that you follow the outlines and the procedures that we have provided. But again, we're here, very eager to hear from you, and do look forward to the future. Thank you. Any other comments, anyone? I guess that will close us up for today. Thank you, everyone, and I very much appreciate all of you who have joined us today.